Good evening, I'm Klaudia Czerwińska and you're watching World News Tonight live from Warsaw. More than 4 years after the start of what was meant to be a 3-day special military operation, has Russia learned its lesson? Latest reports indicate that Moscow has shifted its military tactic. The result? Thousands of people fleeing in panic from the besieged city of Pokrovsk. More updates on the Ukrainian front in just a moment, but first, a look at tonight's other top stories. 3 serious cyber attacks on Polish companies in a single weekend investigated as part of the Russian hybrid warfare. Riots in Belgrade ensue after the mother of a Novi Sad roof collapse victim goes on hunger strike. And 20 years in the making, the Grand Egyptian Museum has officially opened its doors to visitors. As relentless attacks on Pokrovsk continue, forcing residents to flee their homes in the area, Ukraine accused Russia of nuclear terrorism following a deliberate targeting of the civilian energy infrastructure in the Zaporizhzhia region. Attacks that could prove to have catastrophic consequences for nuclear safety, not only in Ukraine, but also the entire Black Sea region. More on the latest developments in Ukraine and their potential impact in Randy Potts' report.
In scenes eerily reminiscent of February 2022, Ukrainians in the besieged city of Pokrovsk are crowding the train station and fleeing to safety. Although the city has not yet fallen to the Russian army, and even though Russian gains in the Donbass have long been counted not in miles, but in inches, those inches are suddenly adding up.
These are Vovchansk as well. These are the cities that Russia built a long while ago to protect their own land from the West. And this is the ridiculous of this situation. But now the West is protecting the land from Russia to come to the West.
One of Ukraine's main difficulties with getting more troops to besieged areas like Pokrovsk are the ubiquitous Russian drones. When Russian drones control an area, it's hard to move troops out or in.
Whoever has stronger drones will prevail in this war. Fighting rages both on the ground and in the sky. The enemy is putting pressure on us. We are doing our best to repel them.
But Ukraine continues to make advances and now has some of the best drones in the world.
We try to get as close as possible to the Shahed, almost to land on it, and then we detonate the interceptor. The Shahed is much tougher than Gerbera, the Russian-made analog of the Shahed. The Gerbera can be downed from a distance of 2 meters. It just gets torn apart. With a Shahed, you need to get closer. It all depends on the pilot's skill.
And today, in Zaporizhzhia, regular Russian shelling has just plunged 60,000 people into darkness. And with Europe's largest nuclear plant nearby, Ukraine has accused Russia of practicing nuclear terrorism.
Deliberate strikes on civilian energy facilities that directly affect the safe operation of nuclear installations bear the hallmarks of nuclear terrorism and constitute a grave violation of international humanitarian law.
As if on cue, Russia has publicly launched the Khabarovsk, a new nuclear-powered ballistic missile submarine reportedly designed to carry Poseidon nuclear torpedoes. The launch ceremony took place near the Finnish border. Russian state media claims the submarine can carry up to 12 Poseidon nuclear torpedoes, unmanned underwater vehicles that Moscow describes as capable of striking targets anywhere in the world's oceans. The Russian military also recently tested its nuclear-powered Burevestnik cruise missile, a nuclear-capable weapon Moscow says can pierce any defense shield. In Ukraine, the Russian army seems to be shifting tactics, using armored vehicles more frequently on offensive sectors, possibly in the hopes of quickly taking control over more areas of Ukraine. But Ukraine also has a new weapon, courtesy of the Italian military: the Centauro B-1 tank destroyer, equipped with additional grid protection systems and especially adapted for local combat conditions. As it stands today, Pokrovsk is still holding on in spite of incessant Russian attacks. Moscow is already claiming imminent victory, Kiev projecting hope. For TVP World, Randy Potts.
From the leaking of sensitive information to banking services reporting issues, this is the fallout of a major cyber attack launched in Poland over the past weekend. According to the initial assessment by Poland's Digital Affairs Minister, the attacks were orchestrated by Russia as part of the ongoing hybrid war waged against the West. However, further investigation is yet to reveal the details of the major security breach. Filip Nowicki has more on the businesses affected and the scale of the attack.
Poland has been hit by a wave of cyber attacks over the past 3 days, targeting key online services used by thousands of citizens. On Friday, October 31st, hackers attacked the lending platform Supergrosz, stealing highly sensitive personal information.
In addition to names and surnames, the leak includes pestle numbers, ID card details, home and correspondence addresses, information on marital status and number of children, as well as employment data. The scale of these leaks is deeply concerning.
A day later, on November 1st, the national mobile payment system BLIK was hit by a large-scale cyber attack. For several hours, users across Poland faced problems completing transactions. In recent days, the travel agency Taka has also reported a data breach affecting about 10,000 user accounts. The stolen information included login data such as names, email addresses and phone numbers. Asked by TVP Info about the source of the attacks, Gawkowski said,
"Everything points to the conclusion that the threat comes from Russia. It appears to be another chapter of hybrid warfare, a digital attack that can be linked to Russian intelligence services."
As the investigation continues, the Polish government launched a new online service where citizens can check whether their data has been exposed. Officials are urging users to change passwords, enable two-factor authentication, and consider blocking their pestle number through the dedicated mobile app. Officials warn that further attacks may follow as cyber threats to Poland's public and financial infrastructure continue to grow.
Tensions in Serbia escalate again as anti-government protesters gather in front of the parliament building to support the mother of one of Novi Sad roof collapse victims. Riot police intervened. Our Balkans correspondent Paweł Trzaskowski is on site following the latest developments. Good evening, Paweł. Thank you for joining me. So tell us, what is the situation like right now?
Well, Claudia, it seems that Serbia will finally see snap elections, but it's certainly a roller coaster here in Belgrade, because for a moment it seemed the country is back to square one after yesterday peaceful demonstrations across the country commemorating the first anniversary of the Novi Sad tragedy. Unrest in front of the parliament here in Belgrade, which you can see behind me. And it all happened because a mother of one of the victims of the Novi Sad tragedy wanted to start a hunger strike in front of the parliament. She was denied doing so by the police. Immediately, a lot of anti-government protesters appeared supporting her. Riot police intervened. I managed to talk to some of the protesters. Please listen. Can you tell me, please, why you are here?
We are here because we saw on social media that the guy who was running to Novi Sad was beat up and there was police action. And we are here to support Diana Hrka, the mother of one of the victims of the rain station fall that is going on a hunger strike today.
And why is all the police presence here?
The police are present here to, first of all, prevent the hunger strike. Second of all, to prevent support for it, and third of all, to disperse the crowds that have collected here because of the attack on one of the runners today.
So that you understand the situation behind me, you can see anti-government protesters. Opposing them are the supporters of the SNS party, who set up tent camps in front of the parliament a couple of months ago. Between them, riot police. Just half an hour ago, objects were flying between the two groups, water bottles, fireworks, and it seemed that the tensions will only escalate as more anti-government protesters were coming, more riot police were coming as well, and then it suddenly stopped. Then music started playing, then people stopped throwing objects, and that was when it turned out that Alexander Vučić agreed to call for snap elections.
Let's double down on that. So President Vučić not only apologized to the protesters, but he also said he would respond to their demands by ensuring that the parliamentary elections are held ahead of schedule. So do you think that this will appease the protesters?
Claudia, I don't think that this is a very big... I don't think that this will appease the protest movement, that this is a big concession, because President Vučić has been floating the idea of calling for snap elections even by the end of 2026. However, from what we know now, he announced that the snap elections will be held as late as in 2027, and he did not give a specific date. So theoretically, it could happen even in more than 2 years. So in the long run, I do not think that it will stop the protest movement, because it is only one of their demands. The other demand is still not satisfied, and this is holding accountable the people responsible for the Novi Sad disaster. Claudia.
Thank you, Paweł. Please do stay safe. This was Paweł Trzaskowski reporting live from Belgrade. One suspect is in custody and one has just been released after a tragic stabbing took place at 7:30 p.m. local time Saturday on a train traveling from Doncaster to London. According to the latest reports, 10 people were injured in the attack. Authorities found no evidence that the incident was terror-related, but yearly knife crime figures in the UK are on the rise since 2011. Zuzanna Jurek brings us more details in this next report.
Panic ensued and officers scrambled to react after a horrific stabbing incident occurred on a London-bound train, leaving multiple people seriously injured. 2 suspects were initially arrested, one being released on Sunday evening.
I can tell you that these are the first male, a 32-year-old male, a black British national, and a 35-year-old man, a British national of Caribbean descent. They were both arrested on suspicion of attempted murder. Both were born in the United Kingdom. As stated, they remain this morning in separate police stations for questioning.
The incident occurred at approximately 7:30 p.m. local time, an hour after the train departed from Doncaster. It made an emergency stop in Huntington, Cambridgeshire, where armed police officers boarded the train. According to several eyewitnesses, one of the suspects was tasered while being apprehended. While speaking to BBC News, passengers also described their disbelief at the incident, initially mistaking it for a Halloween prank.
I had guys suddenly run past going, run, run. There's a guy stabbing literally everyone, everything. At first, there was a few of us kind of looking at each other like thinking, was it a joke, like it's Halloween, I'd be pranking. But then you could kind of see in their faces they were being serious.
A man comes running down with a very clear wound, bleeding quite badly on his arm. And I thought it was like some sort of Halloween prank at first. But then he's shouting that someone's got a knife, he was stabbed. And then a few more people come running down the train. According to the initial investigation, police ruled out that the attack was terror-related.
British Transport Police declared a major incident yesterday, and counter-terrorism policing were initially supporting our investigation. However, at this stage, there is nothing to suggest that this is a terrorist incident.
UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer took to social media to urge cooperation with first responders.
The appalling incident on a train near Huntington is deeply concerning. My thoughts are with all those affected, and my thanks go to the emergency services for their response. Anyone in the area should follow the advice of the police.
Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood noted that the investigation is ongoing.
We now know this attack is not being treated as terrorism and that 2 British-born British nationals have been arrested. The investigation is ongoing and I am receiving regular updates from the police.
At this stage, it's unclear what criminal offences the suspects will be charged with. Knife crime has risen in the UK year on year since 2011. For TVP World, Zuzanna Jurek.
The Polish diaspora across the globe numbers around 20 million people. But there is one place on earth in particular where Poles are actually the biggest ethnic minority. And regardless of what you might think, it's not an obvious one. Iceland. Our correspondent Kazimierz Łysiak visited the island and brings you this report on how Poles became an integral part of the faraway country.
We are currently in Reykjavik, the capital of Iceland. This island, nestled between Greenland and the United Kingdom, is home to some 500,000 residents. And about 8% of them are Poles. Polish people are actually the biggest ethnic minority on the island. Some 30,000 of them live and work here. Let's go speak with some of them and find out how close of a community they have and why they decided to settle here. As the old Polish saying goes, the road to the heart leads through the stomach. So we begin by visiting a Polish restaurant serving traditional Polish dishes. There are dozens of them scattered throughout the city.
As a Polish restaurant, we are serving food you can find back home. I can tell you that many Icelanders find this interesting and they visit us to try these dishes.
Poles work in various industries in Iceland, including fishing, construction and tourism. You can see Polish language virtually everywhere, including as an option at self-checkout in supermarkets.
So they came for hard work. The people come to a country to do a job, or jobs which are sometimes too hard for the inhabitants, for the people living here, because they are already wealthy enough to employ foreigners.
And being hard-working is one trait which Icelanders seem to respect quite a lot.
I think they're more or less welcome in Iceland, and I think most Icelanders think they do a fantastic job in whatever field they're working.
To have variety in the population is very important, and learning other cultures and integrating maybe some of the good parts from other cultures is very important.
But Poles have an even bigger presence here than just in manual labor. I'm meeting with Paweł Bartoszek, a half Icelandic, half Polish politician who's leading the country's parliamentary committee for foreign affairs. He confirms to me what we've heard from local residents about their attitude towards Poles.
They consider them to be, hardworking and have good values. So I would say that the overall perception of Poles is positive. I can of course not speak for everybody, but in my case, I think that having a Polish last name, having a Polish origin has only benefited me in my political career.
The Polish-Icelandic relationship is also growing at the government level. Both are staunch supporters of Ukraine, and in the face of Russia threatening the security of both Europe and the Arctic, Iceland is reconsidering joining the European Union.
A referendum is being planned about whether or not to come back to the idea of reopening the negotiations. We support that idea very much. We also try to encourage Iceland to work closer with us on the security domain.
As global politics are catching up to this remote island, its Polish residents don't tend to dwell on them. Instead, they're working hard to make this place their new home.
I like challenges, so I said to myself, why not? I've lived here for 3 years and it's been quite good. Icelanders are really welcoming people. They're friendly and open to outsiders. You can build great relationships here.
After speaking with the residents of this beautiful island, it's clear that Poles are an essential and well-integrated part of this hard-working society. From Iceland, Kazimierz Łysiak, TVP World.
What stunning landscapes. Let's continue. This was a grand opening worthy of pharaohs of ages past. After 20 years of extensive work, the much-anticipated Grand Egyptian Museum has officially opened its doors to visitors. The ceremony, a solemn display of pomp and splendor, brought together royal guests, presidents and other dignitaries from more than 70 countries. More on this lavish inauguration in Sonia Agata-Biszczan's report.
Few things say grand opening like fireworks, an orchestra performance, and actors dressed in ancient garb, all against the backdrop of the actual pyramids. Add to that royal guests, presidents, and other dignitaries from more than 70 countries, and you get the inauguration of
the Grand Egyptian Museum. We are writing a new chapter in the history of the present and future of this ancient nation, for this is the largest museum in the world dedicated to a single civilization.
Starting from the main entrance hall, boasting a grand staircase filled with pharaonic statues, world leaders, accompanied by the Egyptian president and his wife, got to experience the 500,000 square meter facility packed with legacy.
The grand staircase has a history. It begins with the kings. Here the kings become gods, then they embark on their journey into eternity.
Among some 100,000 artifacts on display, treasures from the tomb of the boy king Tutankhamun uncovered in 1922, such as his golden burial mask, stand out.
The full impressive collection of King Tutankhamun is displayed in one place for the first time, in a 7,500 square meter hall.
The museum took roughly 2 decades to build, with the foundation stone laid in 2002. The project was to open in 2012, but it faced delays, reportedly due to cost overruns and political turmoil. But spectators at the grand opening seem to think it was worth the wait.
It's a wonderful feeling. This is proof of 7,000 years of civilization. As our ancestors used to say, if you have no past, you have no present and no future. We are the past, we are the present, and we are also the future.
The hope is for the museum, which came with an approximately $1 billion price tag, to attract as many as 7 million visitors annually. For TVP World, I'm Sonia Gatabishchan.
As the heavy offensive of Pokrovsk continues, the Russian military continues to target Zaporizhzhia and, most importantly, the nuclear substations of one of Europe's largest nuclear power plants. Overall, there's also an understanding that Russia is learning its lessons and changing battlefield tactics. To talk about the latest developments when it comes to Russian offensive and military, Elizabeth Braw, senior fellow at the Atlantic Council, joins me on the program. Good evening, Elizabeth. Thank you for joining me.
Good evening.
So we've had a statement from the Ukrainian Foreign Ministry saying, quote, deliberate strikes on civilian energy facilities that directly affect the safe operations of nuclear installations bear the hallmarks of nuclear terrorism and constitute a grave violation of the international humanitarian law. This is one of the most dangerous games that Russia could potentially play. Why is the Kremlin okay with posing such nuclear risk to the whole wide region targeting Zaporizhzhia? I mean, this is not just Ukraine that would be actually affected.
No, it's not just Ukraine that would be affected. And what has changed when it comes to Russia's behavior is not just a sort of change when it comes to whether or not to damage nuclear facilities or facilities connected to nuclear power plants. It is much more fundamental than that, which is that Russia has essentially decided that it doesn't care about the consequences, it doesn't care about condemnation by other countries, and that's why it can continue attacking substations as it's doing in Ukraine, but also engage in all kinds of unethical, immoral, illegal behavior against other countries in Europe, including Poland. So it's all part of the same strategy and the same pattern, and that makes it incredibly dangerous.
So as we're looking at the situation on the front lines and as we're looking at the Russian military, do you think that Russians, after 3.5 years of war, have learned something and they're applying changes to the battlefield? Are we at a turning point when it comes to their tactics? What do you think?
Well, what we've seen for 3.5 years is the Russian military continuing to learn. They learned the moment they encountered far stiffer resistance in Ukraine than had been promised them. But they've kept learning ever since and kept adapting. And what is important to remember is that they are good at learning, but the answers to the lessons they are learning include some pretty unethical and immoral and sometimes illegal actions. But because those actions are sanctioned or permitted or even ordered by the highest decision makers, then soldiers are they essentially have carte blanche to carry them out. So it is a really quite dangerous situation. And if you look at other recent wars, in the past century or so, you had at least some pretense by the warring parties to abide by the laws that govern warfare. Russia is showing no such pretense, and if you have made the decision not to adhere to the rules of war, then you can only whatever comes next can only be as alarming as what we've seen until now, or even worse.
So according to Union agency, Russians are starting to use more armored vehicles to advance in the city of Pokrovsk. This is something that we've been focusing on here on TVP World when we were covering the subject. This is meant to speed up Russia actually taking land away from Ukraine, taking the territory. So do you think that Russia will be more successful when it actually puts more armored vehicles to use? We know that they're trying to combine them together. The number is increased. Do you think that this is something that is going to actually shift the balance of power on the front line?
Well, what we're seeing the Russians do over and over again is shift resources to where they are most needed, and that's not surprising. That's what armed forces do. Ukraine does that too. You have to shift resources, whether men or equipment, to where they are most needed. But clearly, with this, Russia is showing that this is a priority for Russia at this moment. Ukraine has been. Ukrainian officials have been saying that it is a precarious situation for Ukraine there at the moment, and with Russia allocating more resources, it is a pivotal moment and a quite critical one for Ukraine.
With sanctions affecting Russia, how is the defense industry boding with shortages and access to technology? How is that affecting the outcomes in the battlefield? I mean, Russia is actually isolated in one way from the West when it comes to subparts, when it comes to the military, but it has other countries that are supplying. So how is that balance playing out?
This is a major consideration to bear in mind. We Western countries often think that if we impose sanctions, the country that is being sanctioned will suffer mightily. Well, Russia is not suffering mightily because it has been able to trade quite intensively with other countries, because there are plenty of other countries that are willing and able to trade with it, including countries that can supply the technology, the parts, the components, or at least some of them that the West has sanctioned. And this is the reality today. 40 years ago, Western countries were the only economically strong countries in the world. Could sanction another country and that country would suffer mightily. Today, it's a completely different situation. There is China, there is India, there are the countries in the Middle East, in the Gulf, and elsewhere, who are willing and able to trade with Russia, which is why Russia has been able to keep going all this time, including the Russian defense industry, because some of these countries have the technology, have the components, or at least some of them, and are willing to sell them to Russia.
When we look at fighting, when we are looking at the front lines, we cannot forget that it's not only about the technology, but also about the troops themselves. And this takes me to the next subject, the GOAT tactic that we've heard about when it comes to Russia. As we've learned from the press service of the 7th Airborne Forces Corps, I quote, recently information has surfaced that the enemy has started using female soldiers. These women dress as civilians and pose as local residents, carrying ammunition and batteries for radios in ordinary bags or plastic sacks. In intercepted communications, Russians refer to such operations as letting go of the GOAT. So there is definitely that happening on the front line as well. This also this increases the risks among civilians as well, isn't it? Because these soldiers are actually wearing civilian clothes and are being targeted.
Yes. So first of all, the most important thing to bear in mind is that it's illegal to have people participating in combat who are not dressed as soldiers. There is a clear division in the laws that govern war between combatants and non-combatants. Combatants wear uniform that show clearly for what country, with what country they are affiliated. And as we all know, that the uniform also shows the rank and the name of each soldier. You are not allowed to have soldiers or combatants masquerade as civilians. So this is quite serious. And again, it is connected to what we discussed earlier, which is that Russia has decided to not care about being a respectable country. And once you've made that decision, you have a carte blanche to conduct all kinds of illegal, immoral, and unethical activities, because who is going to stop you? Because condemning your actions is not going to have an effect, and nobody is in a position. Few countries are at the moment in a position to stop Russia's military activities, condemning them, condemning the use of civilians as combatants or disguising combatants as civilians is illegal, but Russia doesn't care if we condemn it.
Thank you very much. This was Elizabeth Braw, Senior Fellow at the Atlantic Council. Elizabeth, thank you for joining me on the program. Pleasure as always.
Thank you.
And so this would be all for now here on World News Tonight. I'm Klaudia Czerwińska. Thank you for joining me tonight, and I hope to see you back here on TVP World for more news and features very soon.